Welcome to the FNO InsureTech podcast, a place where movers and shakers from all points within the insurance ecosystem gather and discuss all things InsureTech. We talk about how technology and innovation are affecting and driving change in the industry. Here are your hosts, Lee Boyd and Rob Beller.
Hey, podcast world, welcome to an international, multi-continent, multi-continent episode of
FNO InsureTech with your host, Rob Beller, and the other guy, Lee Boyd.
And that guy who does all the work when I'm not here, Lee Boyd. That's true. It's true. Does that bother you? Let's digress for a moment and have a little therapy.
I don't know if that's a good idea.
Does it bother you that I'm just the ginormous star of this thing?
No, I think
you're like the Ed McMahon to my Johnny Carson. Is that fair?
Yeah, I like Ed McMahon a lot, so I think that's okay. Ed McMahon, doesn't he go around still? And he's still alive, right?
Dead. He would be dead still now.
Is Ed McMahon dead?
Yeah, he is no longer living.
I thought he was still doing the.
Can we have one of our
Publisher Clearinghouse? Can
we have one of our Cracker Jack production team please check this out as we're live on the air?
When did he die?
No, he died recently.
That is sad. You just said it, Ed McMahon.
Okay,
so no, I don't want to be Ed McMahon because he's not here anymore.
Yeah, neither is Johnny Carson though, for that matter. Yeah. So
no, I like that. I like to think that I may be Paul Schaefer to your David Letterman.
I'm good with that.
I like Paul Schaefer. He's from Canada. He's from a different country.
You're not. What? Well, I don't understand what point you're making.
We're both short. He's bald. I'm not. I think he plays the drums. I played the drums.
Okay, he's quite a musician, I do believe.
He is. He's quite a musician. I wonder what he's doing these days. He's not dead, is he?
I don't think Paul Schaefer's dead. I think he's having a great time doing whatever he does.
I read his book a long time ago. I picked up at an airport.
I
can't remember anything about it.
Okay.
I can't remember anything about it.
He was the sidekick to David Letterman.
He's from Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And he's bald.
Mm-hmm. What does
not that there's anything wrong with it.
Okay, so here's a question for you. What does anything we're talking about have to do with today's episode?
David Letterman and Paul Schaefer are from two different countries.
But you and I aren't. Oh, no, there you go.
Our guests are from two different countries.
Our guests are from two different countries. And we'll be speaking to them from two different countries.
At the same time. Isn't that neat? Isn't that neat how you can do a podcast from halfway around the world and everything just works?
It's awesome.
Isn't that cool?
It's awesome.
Technology really changes the way that we live. And with that being said, our guest today is going to talk about technology changing the way that Australia does insurance.
We have Richard Jaffe, CEO and co-founder of Honey Insurance, a fascinating guy, serial entrepreneur. He's had a couple exits, and I think you'll really enjoy him, and a returner. Brett Jurgens, CEO and co-founder of Notion. Brett and his co-founder founded Notion several years ago and sold to Comcast, not a little company. That's right, Comcast, to work in their home security world. A couple of years ago, maybe, they sold to Comcast. And somehow these two got hooked up, and they're doing business halfway around the world with one another.
Yeah, I think it's great. We're going to get to talk about the partnership. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Notion. Ever since we had them on, I actually have some Notion devices at my house, and they're great. And we're going to get to talk about how Honey and Notion work together and how they are really changing the landscape of insurance in Australia. We're going to get to dive into a little bit about insurance in Australia, something I didn't know about. But Yeah, it'll be a great conversation today.
Yeah, and how it's how the industry is a little different there and a little the same. So why don't we get into that, and we can stop talking and our listeners are going, God, how long is this going to go on for?
Normally
when
3
does
to 5
it
minutes.
Stop.
3 to 5 minutes.
Is that what it is? So it's really not long.
Why don't we go ahead and jump into our interview?
Without further ado, here is our interview with Brett Jurgens and Richard Jaffe. Hey, everybody. We are here for a very special podcast. It's a twofer. A twofer. That's right. We have 2 guests for the price of 1. And of course, this podcast costs you exactly nothing. So it's even better than that. We have with us today guests from all over the world. Is that correct? Are we all over the world today?
All over the world.
Uh-huh.
Well, at least one of us is all over the world.
Like literally the farthest place in the entire planet that's populated.
Yeah.
Let's start with, we have 2 guests. We have Brett Jurgens from Notion, co-founder of Notion, and Richard Jaffe, CEO and co-founder of Honey Insurance. And Richard, tell our audience where you are today.
So I'm based in Sydney, Australia. I moved 3 years ago from San Francisco. But yeah, I'm in beautiful Australia.
Great. What's the weather like there today?
It is breathtaking with a splash of lockdown. So,
well,
what season is it in Australia?
It's summer. Everything is the opposite here, literally, from the way the toilet water flushes. Right.
Is that true? Does the toilet really flush backwards?
Yeah, it's true. Incumbent insurance companies need to, pick up their game, and toilet water is flushing backwards. What is the world becoming, right?
Fantastic. Oh, Sydney.
And what about you, Brett Jurgens? Where are you today?
I'm just in the middle, right in Colorado, in Denver, Colorado.
I mean, that's fun. Colorado's nice.
That's awesome. And full disclosure, Brett Jurgens is a second timer on our podcast. Is that right, Brett?
Yeah, probably, 3 years ago or so I was on.
It was a long time.
I would imagine a lot's happened since then. Maybe we'll get to talk about it.
We could start there.
I think that's a great place to start.
Brett, what's happened at Notion in the last 2 years?
Yeah, so the big news for us, a little over a year and a half ago, we were acquired by Comcast. We have had a number of insurance partnerships for a long time, and we have some other partnerships outside of insurance. And Comcast was one that was a little bit of a combination of both in some unique ways. But we were acquired in February, about a week before lockdown really happened. For COVID. So kind of crazy timing, but it's been a great partnership and a great, future for us with such a big, Fortune 50 company who's got 30 million connected customers and pretty big vision on what we're doing.
Tell us just real quickly, why would Comcast buy you guys? Why were they interested in your space, and how did they come to choose you?
So from Comcast's point of view, there's sort of this future of continuing to connect homes and small businesses, but also to protect them. So kind of this connect and protect theme, I'd say on a broad basis. DIY home and business monitoring and security is a big theme for them. We're kind of being able to continue to expand their footprints in people's homes that they're already connected to, usually through a broadband connection and internet connection. And they also have some partnerships in the insurance space that we were, partners with those companies prior to. And so I think there was a unique opportunity for us to come in and provide some more expertise and some, kind of exciting, roadmap opportunities for them. And it just, it was a good fit, kind of right timing, right place, right time.
Well, big congratulations on that. I mean, that's for many entrepreneurs in the tech space, kind of a dream acquirer. And so congratulations to that. And we also have Richard with us coming from Australia. Richard, you're also an entrepreneur, a serial founder, correct? Tell us a little bit about you and a little bit about Honey.
So this is my third startup, which I founded. I started and sold two in the past. Both of them were very much automation businesses that kind of made something more efficient. My first company was called Park Assist, which is all those green and red lights that shows you where to park your car when you're driving around. And then the second one was called Stella, which automated recruiting departments. And so I married a Sydney girl, a couple of kids, and moved to Australia from San Francisco 3 years ago, and was looking at what to do next. And Australia is a very unique place in many ways, which we can get into. But I also didn't want to spend my life traveling again. And so I started looking, when I was looking at what to kind of do next, I started looking a lot into financial services and insurance, given the size of the industry. And the reality was insurance was just ages behind the US. Like, it was quite obvious when I arrived that it was another Australian oligopoly. Consumers definitely were not feeling and touching innovation in any way that we would think about it in the US. And so I was really excited to try and shake up the industry, or at least be a part of that. And, the playbooks, I think, from Lemonade and Hippo and WeFox, and kind of when you look globally at what's happening, there's no question Australians, deserve to have a piece of that. And Notion being, I think, a big piece of how you can really improve quality of life for people, like in an environment as well, where, I don't think there's any country in the world that's stricken with catastrophic issues, weather-related issues, as much as Australia, right? So it's a very strong tech adopting society. You've got the highest GDP per capita in the world. You've got an oligopoly that's really not innovating or giving people value add. And you've got people, the customers themselves are like very attuned to risk, right? When you have bushfires and flooding, and like when these things are front of mind constantly, it definitely creates pervasive understanding amongst the customers that, using tech to really reduce risk matters, right? I'd say even more than in the US, frankly.
So help me understand this. We went from founding Park Assist, which helps people, find a spot inside a parking garage, to revolutionizing the way insurance works in Australia. I mean, those seem pretty far apart. So was it like, hey, I did this Park Assist thing, and I went to Australia and I was looking for something? Or how in the world did insurance come to your mind?
Connect those dots for us, please.
Well, first, so it's my third one. I think, in both of my first two companies, the problem we went after was just an efficiency problem, right? Like, there's a consumer problem where technology can just make it easier to buy or add value fundamentally, right? And whether it's parking or recruitment or insurance, the blueprint is really the same, which is, where are you on the technology adoption curve? So for example, if we were 10 years ago or 15 years ago, the technology that Brett is building at Notion wouldn't be something that you could give away for free to every home insurance customer. You couldn't tolerate that cost, right? So the timing is right now, where the value add of technology for that specific use case can really move the needle in a substantial way. And it was no different than, when I went after parking or went after recruitment. And I don't think this will be my last rodeo either, right? But I think it's really interesting when you look at industries and say, where are we on the technology curve? And has there been a change in the last 3 to 5 years, so quite recent, that allows us to add substantial value to customers in a pain point in a way that didn't exist, call it 5 years ago? And I think what you're seeing in insurance when it comes to automating how you buy insurance, meaning reducing the number of questions and just reducing friction around renewals, when you just digitize that experience, that's a big deal for people. You can do that in a way you really couldn't do 5 or 10 years ago. When you think about how you can use technology, and I spent a lot of, a decade in IoT when I was in parking, it was all smart sensors, right? So what Brett's doing in Notion is hardly a foreign concept to me. I mean, it's a different application, obviously, but I spent a decade looking at wireless technologies, right? So when you look at these applications, it makes a lot of sense as a consumer, right? I want my insurance company to reduce risk in my life. And if I'm shelling out $1,600, $1,700 annually, there's enough money in that unit economics that the insurance company can absolutely, or should certainly, justify spending money on tech and services to reduce risk. The math stacks up. If you doubled or tripled the price of the technology, which was the case 5 or 10 years ago, that use case, that opportunity doesn't exist, right? And so I think the most interesting place to kind of build companies is at the intersection where cost reductions in technology enable new value added services, right? And there's a million examples from Uber to, you name it, right? Airbnb, right?
Yeah. And so is that what Honey Insurance is? You're using technology at the core to be able to offer your insureds a cheaper product or the right product? What are you doing with that technology at its center?
Yeah. So our philosophy is, we're probably average price in the market. I think when you look at a lot of the new InsureTechs out there and even insurance brands out there, the playbook normally is we have something to the effect of we have a 10% cost advantage versus an incumbent, right? Like they're just running less efficiently for a myriad of reasons. Let's use that cost advantage to drop price 10% with a new brand and we'll get some market share. I mean, sure, you can dress that up, but that's kind of the playbook, right? And so I think our view was, hold on a second, what if we price right, like we're average in the market, but what if we redeploy this 10 or 15% annually into value-added tech and services that actually reduces risk in the customer's life, right? The irony is that not only are we better off because retention goes up and claims goes down and customers are genuinely better off in their lives, right? They're lower risk. The irony is we're actually in the money in the long haul, right? Because the unit economics stacks up. Now you have to spend a lot of money up front. It's very capital intensive because you're dishing out, millions, tens of millions of dollars, right? For Notion sensors and what have you. But it turns out in the long game, if you have the patience for that it really, everyone wins in the end. The customers win because they're having less claims. We win because our loss ratios go down. And ironically, over time, price will go down in the long haul. But no, we're not competing on price. Our value prop is we're going to sell insurance for the same price as everyone else for home insurance, right? Home landlords. The difference is that we're going to kind of wow the customer by giving them hundreds and hundreds of dollars of free tech and services to actually reduce risk in their lives. So we're redeploying that margin into true value add as opposed to just giving a once-off discount, right?
Very interesting. And I mean, that must be a message that you try to put out to people. You're going to pay us the same price, but you're going to get more.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for most people, they're less concerned. It's become insurance. I can only talk to Australia, but I think people are price sensitive within reason. But the reality is that that's because no one's doing anything to help their customers, right? And in a world of commoditization where everything's the same, where the existing incumbents try to make it difficult to understand what's in your policy. Like it's no different than the telco industry, right? Like when you're moving towards commoditization, your only way to create a barrier to entry is to create complexity to customers where they can't really compare across companies. And so it becomes hard for you to it becomes all too much. And so you just throw your hands in the air and you don't shop around, right? And so I think the exact opposite, the antithesis of that, right, is what if we come in and actually offer like true value add for customers, which would motivate them to move. So I think most people are within 10 or 15% are not that motivated by price. Whether you're paying $1,600 or $1,700 is not typically the trigger. If you're able to actually reduce risk in someone's life 50% for them and their families, I mean, that's like, it's genuinely a big societal, it's like a real issue, like at scale. And I think that's the problem we're going after, right? 50% of accidents, there's nothing we can do. It's a hailstorm. It's a force of nature, right? It's a bushfire. Like Brett and myself cannot solve that problem unless Brett's cooking up a satellite technology platform I don't know about. But I think, there's not much we can do about that. But the other 50%, it's water leaks. It's your fire alarm going off while you're in the movies and you didn't know about it. It's you left your garage door open and someone stole something, right? There really are things that we can help to solve. And so the question then is, how do we take what Brett's developed in Notion and how do we put that into a customer's hands in a way that's just so easy to understand and seamless that ultimately actually reduces risk in their lives? And we think people care far more about that than whether it's $50 or $100 cheaper, right?
So I'm guessing that's what brought you guys together. And I really want to hear the story about how that happened. But the Notion product is one of those important value adds that you offer to your customers if they buy your policy. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's exactly right. And we're seeing, I don't want to speak for all customers in the US, but my understanding is in the US, I think, Brett, the adoption rates are about 70-75% is my understanding on the policies. And, in Australia, we're seeing north of 90%, nearly 95% of people are saying.
Wow, that's high.
Yeah, exactly. And so, again, albeit we're early days, but, we are starting to see meaningful volumes and we're seeing well north of 90%. So we're seeing very high adoption rates.
Are there cultural differences? I mean, you've lived in various places in the world. Are there cultural differences, and Brett, maybe you know this as well, between, say, the U.S. consumer space and the Australian consumer space that would lead to higher adoption in Australia? Or do you think that you're just more effective in getting the message out?
Well, Richard, you know Australia, and I don't. I think that one thing I know about the IoT market, broadly speaking, kind of the connected home market, is that there have been many fewer entrants into Australia. I think that Australians are hungry for technology. And I think, as Richard said, there's high GDP per capita. And so you have, kind of an interesting situation where people are acutely aware of perils, and just a good situation for us to find a great partner to sort of enter into that market with. But, culturally speaking, Richard, you would know better than me.
Yes, I don't think there's a single individual reason. I think there's 3 or 4. It's a confluence of 3 or 4 things that drives that. I think first and foremost, there's just not a lot of competition, right? You've got 5 companies that control probably 85% of home insurance in Australia. I mean, there's dozens of brands under them, but really there's 5 platforms. And, the R&D to premiums, to revenue it's incredibly low, right? So again, in the scheme of things, they're not investing into real customer innovation and value add. And so I think number one, there's just a lack of competition, right? You don't have InsureTechs at scale here, really. I mean, there are a few floating around, but at the scale you would think about in the US, there's not really InsureTechs here. So I think it's wide open and not a lot of competition. I think it's definitely a tech-centric society, right? Like they're early adopters on the technology curve in many ways, I would say. And then the third is that they're very sensitive to safety and risk, because it's hard to imagine a 3 or 4 month period where you're not hearing about some flood or some bushfire or some drought or just something significant that's happening to people, right? And so when that happens, you have a soft ear, so to speak, where people, they want to use technology to reduce risk in their lives, right? They're aware of it. So I think it's really 3 or 4 different things that come together in that stew.
Brett, why don't you tell us how in the world did you two meet up? I always thought of Notion probably as a American-based company. I could be wrong. Tell me if I am. But yet in Australia, we have Honey. So what's the story there?
Yeah, well, we've been partnering with insurance companies now for about 4 years, and kind of across the board, some InsureTechs, some incumbents, a couple of players on the SMB side even. Hippo is one of our big customers here in the U.S. amongst others, and it was a good connection through them. That's kind of the short story. And so,
oh, wow.
I think some of the successes that we've seen with them translated into not only the model that Richard and Honey have, but also to what Richard was talking about earlier, just his background and familiarity with IoT devices and the data and the analytics side of this not being foreign to him at all. And I think that's one of the big differences that we see with some InsureTechs versus some incumbents, is just a different mentality, right? Richard came from, 2 other startups coming out of Silicon Valley. There's a little bit of a different mold there, so to speak, that just fits what we're doing really well. And I think a lot of what Notion is about is helping insurance companies in multiple ways that aren't necessarily obvious to a lot of folks that maybe are consumers. One of them is helping differentiate at the front end to acquire customers, which is a lot of what we're talking about here. Some of it is, retention and engagement. A lot of times you don't have an ongoing positive relationship with your insurance company. You pay them money and you hope to get a check when you need it, when something wrong happens, when something bad happens, but you don't really have much of an ongoing relationship with them. And I think some of the things that we're seeing some of our partners do that, I think Honey has aspirations for is being a different kind of insurance company, not just technology, but really on that service side, on being a partner in property ownership and protection, not just kind of the finance company standing behind the value of the property. And then, claims reduction, right? Mm-hmm. Loss reduction is a big part of it as we hopefully catch things early, change behavior, et cetera. But that was kind of a little bit of the story on the front end in terms of how we got to know each other, and there was some good proof points in terms of what we had been doing already that I think helped help make this partnership happen.
Richard, had you gone out and said to yourself, I need to find an IoT provider? What's the story on your side?
Yeah, I mean, look, we looked at probably a dozen companies globally. We looked at everything from getting a local partner to kind of integrate and cobble together different products, right? Sensors, right through to European and American suppliers. And, I think several things stood out. And some of them are similar fingerprints to what we value as a high growth company. But I think the things that stood out, number one, is that there's lots of people that can provide pieces of a smart home platform, but they're generally not fit for purpose, right? So you can go to Ring and they can provide you with the Ring doorbell, right, at Amazon, but that's like one piece only. And they're probably not going to be so friendly when it comes to allowing you to integrate that device into your app, for example, right? You could go to folks that could help you to detect, that could give you a smart CO2 or carbon monoxide detector, for example. But then you're dealing direct into Asia kind of thing, right? There's other folks. So the punchline is that there's only a handful of companies we found that really were building for the use case we have, which is you are a customer with insurance and the insurance company ideally doesn't ever want you to use insurance, right? Like that's our problem. The problem we're solving for is we don't want the customer to actually ever need us fundamentally. And so if you're looking for a technology provider that can solve that problem, meaning we need to be able to get access to activation data, for example, so that we know you're actually running the smart home sensor so we can give you discounts, right? We need to be able to integrate that into our broader platform as well to make it easy and simple for the customer to use. So and we also wanted a company that was roughly our size, meaning had enough track record and scale that they could work dynamically and quickly with us, right? Yeah. But not enough scale that they would suffocate us, right? And they just couldn't execute. And, so Notion, I think, checked all of those boxes. The technology platform was fit for purpose. The size and, quality of Brett's team was just fantastic. Like we have a great working relationship. They're a tech company, right? I mean, they call us back quickly. They're on it. When there's issues, we work through it. And it's a very different DNA than dealing with a large tech company, it's just not practical given the velocity we're moving, right?
Has that been a challenging thing for you, Brett? Going from being, a little nimble startup to being part of a certainly a Fortune 100 company. Have you been able to maintain some of that tech attributes that you had before the acquisition?
We have. I mean, I think one of the things to highlight on our side with the acquisition, we were acquired into a kind of a special group within Comcast called the Strategic Development Group. And there's a handful of other companies, actually a couple of other IoT companies within that group that were either homegrown inside of Comcast or acquired. And so there was a little bit of a playbook as to, I'd say, how to acquire companies, let them continue to grow and do what they're great at, not come in and kind of mess up process, mess up culture, a lot of those kinds of things. And, frankly, let us go compete for partnerships like this one with Honey. I think if it were Comcast and it was going to take, a really long time to sign contracts and weeks on end to get calls back and those kinds of things, it just wouldn't have worked. We've been able to keep quite a bit of autonomy, but in a way that has allowed us to be competitive. And I think that, the benefits are some of the things that we get at scale with a partner like Comcast, whether it's sourcing or, having a fairly sizable balance sheet and a lot of additional resources. I think interestingly too, this is an international partnership, and we have one other partnership in Japan. And you asked about us being a U.S. company. But this is our first sort of foray into, Australia, maybe obvious to say that, but worth mentioning. And we were able to move pretty fast with a lot of resources, that Comcast was able to kind of help bring to the table. Long answer, but summary is, we really have been able to kind of continue to maintain a lot of that small company look and feel, both internally for employees and externally for partners, but have a lot of the advantages of the big company sitting behind us.
So I remember when we spoke with you a couple of years ago, and it's kind of remarkable now to look back a couple of years and see how much your space has not only changed but become more crowded, right, in the last few years. It's kind of stunning. I'm sure it's stunning for you. But a couple of years ago, you kind of saw Notion as being a hub for IoT in the home. Do I remember that correctly? Isn't that kind of how you were visioning the product?
In some ways, yes. I mean, I think that the mission that we're really on and the way we view it is to reduce the risk of property ownership. And we kind of like to say reduce the risk of ownership so much that we become a requirement for obtaining insurance. I think we liken it to a seatbelt in a car. You didn't used to have seatbelts in cars, which sounds crazy, but that was the case. Technology then came along. It got cheap enough. It got tested enough to where people understood how much safer you could be. And that's really the journey that we're on. And so when we think of like the hub or the platform for the home, we will continue to play nicely with other IoT platforms, either on the hardware or software side, as they continue to expand and grow. I think you'll see us on our roadmap really continue to focus on, core areas of property protection and not as much on some of the areas that are a little bit maybe more fun, a little more gadgety, not to downplay those as important aspects of, especially, consumers recognizing the importance of devices. But that's really kind of how we see, our purpose in the world and where we're taking the company.
So your desire is for insurance companies to really push for it, not so much the tech people out there like me who want the really cool next thing. I mean, you want to be a functional product in the home that is doing exactly what it needs to do, not just a neat whim. Is that what I'm hearing?
100%. And, hopefully somebody like you who wants the cool gadget also sees a little bit of that in Notion as well. We just want to continue to make sure that what we provide for customers and for partners is really true value. I mean, it's kind of, Richard said this before, our DNA sort of matched, and he was using a lot of the same terms about how they view insurance. And we just have, what we think of as kind of the other piece of the equation for insurance companies, really take that next step in kind of more proactive prevention. And then, I think it's worth mentioning too, just the business side, the kind of data and analytics side that we're able to help insurance companies with. We're just kind of scratching the surface with a lot of our partners on that front about how to choose where you put a sensor based on the dangers you have in your specific home. How do we get to potentially thinking through customized insurance products with our partners where, your insurance not only is well understood by you as a homeowner, but is really specific to you, almost like you see in the auto telematics space where you've got, driver discounts or, kind of individualized insurance products. How do we do that with properties in a better way? How do we ensure those properties in a more customized way? And then also, how do we protect them? Ultimately, at the end of the day, right, is kind of the theme here. So that's kind of how we see that part of it. And it's really just related a lot to the risks of properties, fire, theft, and then water and temperature still continues to be a huge theme and a very preventable, loss at the end of the day for both the owner and the insurer.
Richard, and so with a 90 to 95% adoption rate, from the little bit that we've gotten to know about you, I'm sure you're still thinking about this, right? And you're thinking about more. And how do I stretch it further? So what's on your mind there?
I think the space that Brett and myself need to think about over the coming, couple of years, I think, is where have we seen costs come down for technology products that can reduce risk for customers, right? So examples of that are, around, if you think about water, fire, and theft, right, is the three primary perils that you can kind of control risk to a customer, right? What are the devices that you can use that can help reduce some of those risks? You kind of overlay that, obviously, to the actual claims rates. And so I think examples to that are around, water leaks, for example, are the things that you can do remotely to switch off water if there's a leak when you're on holiday, things like that, right? We've talked about things like video doorbells and what have you. So I think, meaning Amazon parcels getting stolen and things like that. So I think, how do we kind of deconstruct the different places where bad things happen to customers in their house? And then how do we take a look at where technology can reduce those risks for a cheaper cost than the claim costs, right? I mean, fundamentally, that's what we're trying to do. And then give that to customers for free because everyone wins. And so there's probably half a dozen problems that you could go after. And I think over the coming years, each one of those will become easier to kind of solve for free for the customer as technology costs come down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Richard, maybe one other just quick point to make too. I think we're kind of going into the purposefulness of these things, and there is a customer engagement aspect that's important to consider. Things like cameras, things like doorbell cameras, are pretty highly desired by people. Water leak sensors are less desired by people. Some of the worst partnerships in terms of adoption rates and installation rates that we ran early on were when we messaged with a partner all about water. Every insurance company wants to stop water leaks. That's their number one priority. Right. Most homeowners really want a home security system. They really want a doorbell camera. They really want, indoor and/or outdoor video cameras. They're highly engaging products.
Sure. How
do we balance out that demand from the customer? But I think an important thing that's happening right now is, I can pat myself on the back and say Notion is a highly engaging, really awesome product, but Honey is doing a fantastic job marketing the product and making it clear why they have such a differentiation in their insurance product, especially in the Australian market. And no, it doesn't mean we're going to stop here and that we've got it and Sensors Plus Insurance in Australia is it. And, we'll ride up into the sunset. That's not it at all. We got to keep competing and keep winning. And we have to continue to make sure we're competitive, for Honey and for our other partners in the market. But there is a unique kind of combination of what an insurance company wants as an end result, more customers, retain customers and less loss, with what homeowners actually want.
Right.
They don't really care about their insurance company's customer acquisition rate, but they do really care about protecting their families and their properties. So there's a fun combination of things to put together on that one.
That's a great point because many people have never had a water loss in their house and maybe have never known anybody who had a water loss in their house. So why would they care to put a water sensor on the floor in their bathroom when it's probably never going to happen, as opposed to everybody's heard of somebody who's had a break-in or can conceive of the danger involved in something like that. And that's a great point. Something that I hadn't considered. Is that the kind of stuff that is on your mind, Richard?
Yeah, I mean, look, Brett raises a wonderful point. And I think, Hippo have done an amazing job, I think, of passing on discounts to incentivize people to install these free sensors. And we're doing the same thing. I think you could imagine getting to a steady state, maybe that's in 4, 5, 6 years where the technology costs are dropping enough that a human being can come to your house and do the install. And it's just all completely seamless, right? Or where, the incentives that you can offer people are great enough that even if the customer isn't worried about a heart attack, they're genuinely going to hit the gym because there's enough in it for them that's the motivation, right? And I think that's like an interesting space for us to get into, which is, I think it's very hard to convince people of the heart attack risk, right? You can show them a video of what it means if you get a flood in your home, but that's really not an interesting 2-minute video for most people to watch, right? And so I think at the end of the day, the question is, how do you make it completely seamless? And we think a lot about how to reduce friction in all areas of the Honey experience. And that's everything from onboarding to renewals, but right through to how easy is it to set up your smart home, right? Can we do that in 10 minutes? Well, what if we could do that in 10 minutes with another 3 devices, right? So I think ultimately the question is, how do you do this in a way where it just happens for a customer, where they don't literally have to do anything? Because if I said to you, hey, Rob, you sign up for Honey and everything will be installed for you. You don't do a thing. Okay. You'd imagine that virtually everyone would say, sure, great. Why would I not do that? Right. It's $100 of free stuff. The problem is that you have to set it up and you have to download an app and there's still friction even for free. And I think the closer that we can move to a world where you just download the app into the Apple app, it's completely seamless, right? No different than many of your other experiences today. I think that's nirvana, right? Where we can help people and they really don't have to do anything in order to get that reduced risk in their lives.
In fact, I love that idea because unlike Lee, I want somebody to come into my house and do it all.
Yeah.
He wants to get his hands dirty and play with it. I have no interest in that.
Yeah, we've thought a lot about that. I mean, there's a lot of issues around scalability, and we obsess about controlling the quality of the experience and making sure that we're trying to achieve an NPS of 75 in an industry that's 6, right? So we think a lot about how to create consistent experiences for people, across the board, and having a disparate installation team and support team is very hard from a quality control perspective. We haven't continued to look into that, putting aside costs, but I do think that's the direction ultimately. That it's certainly very interesting for us to try and achieve that, I think, because there's a lot of people, if you snap your fingers, you do it, right? So then the question is like, what do we need to do in order to get closer to the snap?
So when you guys sit around and on a Friday afternoon, it's daytime for one of you and nighttime for the other, and you say, boy, this is my dream. My dream is to do this with the home. What kinds of things do you guys talk about?
I think the seamless experience, not to just repeat what was said, but that is such a big thing for us. And I would say any DIY company is, how can you make it feel as easy as if somebody installed things on their own, or had them installed for them, doing it on your own. I think that the combination of Notion as what we see as the easiest to install set of DIY sensors on the market today. We just have one device that monitors everything simultaneously. No need for different devices to monitor different things. Paired with a company like Comcast, who has 40,000 trucks rolling around the country, is an interesting long-term value proposition. How do we also use home inspectors? How do we use HVAC and plumbers that sometimes go into homes? There's a whole myriad of folks that are going in and out of properties that could play a role in some of these things. But the technology, the ease of use, the setup, and then making people feel really smart about that setup when they do it themselves is another thing we've learned an incredible amount about over the years that we've been really paying attention to what we call kind of the first 10 to 15 minutes of ownership. Can you establish trust? You make people feel smart that they installed something correctly.
Yeah.
But I think the extension of this is, today Notion has some really powerful sensors and some really powerful data analytics products, but that's not the complete suite of things that you need to protect your home. There are services and there are other products that we are working on building and launching today that, we need to get out there ASAP in order to continue to compete. But it's more than competition. It's we want to save people from losses. We want to protect homes and families and pets and belongings and small businesses and all that stuff. Like that's what really is driving us. I mentioned what our mission was earlier. Without things like cameras, without some other things in the fire protection and shut off space, without some other pro monitoring type services, we can't complete that picture. And so we really want to make sure that we're going down that path that I think then ultimately will lead into some customized insurance products that help to protect each property in a unique and custom way better than what we're doing today through our partners. So that's kind of how we think about some of the future steps and what we're sprinting towards on our side.
I think a lot about how we can move home insurance from very much a grudge purchase. Like you're buying a mortgage. In Australia, it's mandatory to have home insurance, right? So every single human being who gets a mortgage, which is about 92% of the country, I believe, that out the gate, you're done. And so these people are buying it because they have to buy it. And the question is there a way that you can change that into a service that people actually genuinely want, right? And so I think a lot about things like, how do we tie in data, for example, so that if you're doing maintenance on your home, you're now getting a discount on your home insurance, right? How do you make sure that people understand they're getting a discount for running smart tech that's, reduces risk in their lives? How do we, automate certain types of repairs for you, right? And I think if you could put it in a very simple way that everyone's kids and parents could understand, right? Where at the end of a quarter, they're looking at their app and it literally says, hey, you're 18% safer because of these 4 things. And you just saved $182 this year because, your behavior and the things that you've done have been good for you and safer. I think that's kind of the future, right? The future is how do you make sure that you're pricing risk appropriately and incentivizing people to actually be safer? And we have the ways to do that right now, but I think we have to package that in a way that's digestible for the mass market in a way that people understand as consumers, right? Not as an insurance company. And I think that's kind of I think a lot about that sort of stuff on nights.
It's all very interesting. I mean, you're trying to invigorate spaces that have been traditionally not very exciting or expensive or both. That's really interesting. I love the term grudge purchase. I'd never heard that before, but I think that's dead on. Nobody wants to go out and buy an insurance policy, but they have to, right? And then Brett is dealing with something where he's serving the insurance industry, but the intermediate, the customer, right, the homeowner, has a different intention or a different priority with his system than the insurance company does. Lots of interesting issues and problems, and it's terrific that you guys found each other, and even more terrific that you found us. And we loved the opportunity to talk to you guys today and have you on. What time is it where you are anyways, Richard?
It's 11 o'clock in the morning, so bright and early.
Oh, damn.
I know.
11 o'clock tomorrow.
Well, for you, that's actually yesterday.
Yesterday.
Being a little US centric there, Rob.
No, we're in your yesterday. We're in your yesterday right now.
Yeah, I can tell you what ticket to buy at the lottery. So
I was going to say it's a huge advantage for Richard to be running an insurance company a day ahead. So
that's right. His
loss ratio should be real good.
That's right. You can actually go sell policies to people before they buy the policy that they're about to buy.
There you go. So, Rob, on that topic, do you have home insurance yet?
As a matter of fact, I'm shopping.
Well, let me tell you about my steak knives and my home insurance.
I was, you know what, when I asked you about what your future holds, I was kind of hoping steak knives was part of it. But because I've seen Australian steak knives, they're like machetes, right?
Yeah. Crocodile Dundee has a long arm.
You're the Crocodile Dundee of insurance. That's awesome.
If we can reduce risk, save some lives and a couple of houses, I think that's I'll take that over the knives.
Well, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. So would we. And listen, we loved having you, Brett. Thank you for coming back again. And Richard, be prepared because you're going to hear from us again.
That sounds great. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for having us. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thank y'all guys so much.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
So Lee, we did this interview this week while I was in like the nicest hotel I've ever been in. And we didn't have time to do the outro. So we're doing it now because I had other things to do.
You did. You had a few other things to do.
I had a few other things to do. I was at a conference this week.
Yeah. How was that conference?
It was good. It was very interesting. Which conference was it? It was the Property Information Report National Conference.
Huh. It's a long title.
They usually have 250 people. They had 175. And the organizer told me the 75 people that were missing were all carrier people, which was correct. It was very, very light on carrier people and very, very heavy on vendors.
Why was that? Was that because carriers still aren't traveling?
I believe so. Yes, they still aren't allowed to. But you would like to know that just like when we went to InsureTech Connect, there was a ton of people there who'd been on our podcast.
Was there? That's always fun.
Brian Cottonsteady was there from Cape Analytics.
That's fun.
Tony Triola was there from Verisk.
I know that guy.
Yeah, and more. And
why don't we get the founder of the conference on?
He won't do it.
Oh.
Which is not something that we're used to, right? I mean, usually people say yes.
Yeah.
So we'll just have to keep trying.
That's true.
We're super grateful to our guests today. Or actually the other day.
We are. I mean, it was really good getting to talk to everybody. It's neat to see how Australia and America, not even that, it's really interesting to hear how the insurance world of Australia is working. And how Richard's going in there and kind of, mixing things up and bringing InsureTech down to a insurance world where there's about 5 players, he said. I think it's very exciting to hear about what he's doing. Very exciting. And we're thrilled whenever we have an opportunity to showcase an InsureTech that's making it and making waves. It's cool. Very cool. Thanks to Brett.
and to Richard. And thanks to you for listening to us. And until next time.
Goodbye, everybody.